Now, today's issue is the following. Do you support the presidency of Bashar al-Assad? And should he step down or be removed from power?
So joining us on the line is Rafif Jouejati. She is a Syrian-American activist who is working to expose human rights violations taking place in Syria. She works with activists in Syria and opposition abroad, and she also serves as the English language spokesperson for the local coordination committees, or the LCC, of Syria. And also on the line from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates is Ali Mohammed, who is editor of the Syrian Tribune, an online publication that supports the Assad presidency. He also writes about political Islamic movements in the Africa and the Middle East. Thank you both for joining us.
Welcome
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to both of you. I'd like to just throw out a few ground rules here. Please make your case with reasoned arguments and be respectful. Also, there are two sides to any issue, and what we want from you is to just state your case. And you may address one another as well as us. And as I said, our community will be voting on your cases online.
All right, let's begin. So this is the first question, and this is basically like an opening statement. First, we'd like a 60-second statement of why you support or do not support the current presidency of Bashar al-Assad. And so, Rafif, I'd like to start with you. We get about 60 seconds on the clock, and then we want to hear from Ali.
Okay. Thank you. I don't support Bashar al-Assad because I and many millions of Syrians are fed up with 4 decades of military dictatorship. We're fed up of 4 decades of having our country being treated like a family farm. More importantly, with the recent events in Syria, we are fed up with a government firing on unarmed protesters and killing all kinds of civilians and children.
We'll go ahead and have Ali respond. What in 60 seconds or less, Ali, do you support the presidency of Bashar al-Assad and why?
Thanks. Actually, the question to me is not whether or not I support the president himself. The question right now at this critical moment in the Syrian history is whether or is what I choose as the better choice for Syria. And this is not regarding choosing Assad himself or not. It's choosing Assad's line at times and mostly avoiding what would be a much worse situation than what my colleague called dictatorship.
I'm going to follow up on that. So are you saying, Ali, that you don't necessarily support Assad the person, but you support the stability in the country? And because I'm confused, obviously stability comes from he being in power. So are you basically not in support of the revolution and the uprising, but have issues with Assad?
That's a better way of saying it. Yes, I am not in support of the uprising, and siding with Assad at this moment is not because Assad means this much to Syria, it's because Syria means this much to Syrians. I do not support the uprising or the so-called revolution. I am siding with Assad at the moment. I was not before the revolution, and I may stop siding with him after the revolution.
Ali, I'd like to pose a question to you, and we'll throw it out to Rafif afterwards. 4,000 people are dead, and that's, by some estimates, a conservative estimate. For example, when I talked to General Hashim, he said it could be twice that number or more. Now, somebody is doing the killing. We hear from one side that it is the regime, the military, and the Shabiha. We hear from others, the other side, that it is armed terrorists supported from the outside. I pose the question to you, who is doing the killing?
Well, it's kind of a mixture of both stories. There's no doubt that security forces did shoot at protesters. This is something I personally regret, and it pains me that I am siding with the side that did that. Yet, this is not the only thing that happened. There is also no doubt that armed gangs did shoot. I have proof. I know people who served in the military during the events, who are still serving in the military during the events. I know military injured personnel who got shot in such situations. And my brother, working at the hospital in Banyas, he witnessed some of the killing himself as early as the 10th of April.
Rafif, I wanted you to respond to that. Do you think there are other armed elements? It's basically all innocent, peaceful protesters that have been protesting and then died in this conflict? Or are there armed elements, and does it even matter?
What I can tell you is that the protests have been largely peaceful. Since the beginning of the revolution, the protesters on the ground adopted silmiye, which means peaceful. And in fact, in many instances, were offering flowers and drinking water to the soldiers that were coming at them. So the majority of the killing has been perpetrated by the security forces and the Shabiha. It's important to note that the Shabiha are usually dressed in plain clothes, but they're armed. It's also important to note that in every major city in Syria, there are tanks stationed throughout the towns and cities. There are snipers on rooftops taking shot at civilians as they go about any sort of daily business they're allowed to go about. Certainly, there may be some people who have taken up arms. We have to expect that people have the right to self-defense. And so I say that anybody who's taken up arms, any civilians who've taken up arms, are defending themselves and their families.
I'd like to go back to what Ali said. You say that we talk about armed groups. It's a shadowy term. Who are the armed groups? Who are these armed terrorists?
And if I could jump in, Cecily, that would be a perfect question for Ali. Who are these armed gangs? We've been told, we as activists have been told that they are Islamic radicals. We've been told that they're Americans. We've been told that they're Al Jazeera reporters. And we've been told that they're the French.
Ali?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure who told you this. I wasn't told that. But I will answer your question and at the same time offer a counter debate to what you said. You said that protesters adopted silmiye from the early beginnings. Well, I can't think of early beginnings earlier than the 10th of April. At that day, my own brother witnessed the horribly mutilated body of a person whose name is now quite famous in Syria, Nidal Jannoud. My own brother received the corpse at Banias National Hospital, and this guy was tortured horribly. Later on, video leaked, many videos leaked actually, some photos as well. I was the one who saw the photo the first time, and I sent it to my brother for verification, and it turned out to be the same person. And we saw clearly in those videos, if you go back to my blog, in one of the articles I wrote about this, it's called The Syrian Revolution Under the Bonnet. The videos are there, and you see clearly that those who killed them, who were carrying weapons, are the same people who were on shoulders yelling "Silmiye, Silmiye" in protest in Banias. That was the 10th of April. I can't think of any earlier date. This is an example of what happened in other places as well. We witnessed horrible things in many places, and the fact is, carrying weapons has been a norm from the beginning. It was not an exception. It was not a personal attitude, or as you named it, protecting oneself.
Do you feel that the 4,000 deaths as quoted by the UN, in excess of 4,000 deaths, is an accurate figure? Because Assad says it's not in his interview with Barbara Walters this week. So that's my first question to you. And then the second question is, there is a plethora of online video evidence to show that there have been horrendous torture. I mean, you know the case, of course, of the young Hamza al-Khatib who was tortured. And so even if there may be the existence of armed groups, there's clearly overwhelming evidence, even the defected soldier that talked to Cecily, who was told he was ordered to fire on civilians. Do you contest any of that other information, conceding that, yes, there may be armed gangs there?
Well, first to comment on what you said, that it began as a peaceful protest. Well, I'll give you 2 weeks of peaceful protest from March 25th to April 10th when Nidal Jannoud was killed. So that's 2 weeks. I think it's a bit too short in the history of a country like Syria with 7,000 years of history. To answer your first question, you said, do I believe that the number is 4,000? I don't have any means by which I can verify whether the number is correct or not, but I lean towards not believing that this number is correct, mainly because the main source of this number, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, is a source that I don't trust. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 more or 1,000 less. This is Syrian blood. This is regrettable. This should not happen, and whether it's 100 or 1,000, it's the same to me. One innocent person killed is enough pain for a whole country.
Rafif, why don't you respond to that?
Absolutely. I'd like to respond to something that Ali said earlier, he traced the revolution back to April of this year, and I'd like to rewind a little bit from there when a group of teenagers in Daraa scrawled some graffiti on the school walls saying, "Ashab yurid isqat al-nizam," or the people want to topple the regime. Those children were arrested, detained, tortured, and returned to their families as an example. By torture, I'm saying that their fingernails were pulled out and their hands were smashed. There are many, many instances like these that point to peaceful civilians expressing themselves and being treated with brutality in return. So we need to go back to February and start documenting from there. With regard
may I respond to this point, please?
Well, I'd like to answer the question, if you don't mind, since I gave you the floor. In response to the question about the number of deaths, I think 4,000 is a very conservative number. I imagine it's more likely to be double that, and that number is just deaths that have been documented. I myself participate in a documentation effort, and we track deaths by name, age, location of death, how they died, whether or not they were tortured or simply shot. We document their family circumstances and the loved ones they've left behind. So I can assure you that what is being published, whether it's by the Syrian Observatory or the local coordination committees, is only published after extensive documentation.
Let's agree that 4,000 people are dead, many tortured by whomever. All of this has happened on Bashar al-Assad's watch. He has not been able to stop it. Should he or should he not assume responsibility and step down?
The trap that was set in asking this question, do you accept responsibility? The president cannot come on TV, on an American TV, I am responsible, because the next step would be the American spokesperson, the American Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson, asking him, if you are responsible, why don't you step down?
No, I think the question, Ali, was...
Let me restate the question for a second, because we are running out of time. But basically, what do you think Assad's fate will be?
May I take that?
Let me just give you three options to make this as succinct as possible. What do you think Assad's fate will be? If you look at the other Arab Spring dictators, basically result in either victory, meaning staying in power and eventually putting this down. Well, you may see that happen in Bahrain. Death is what you saw in Libya. Or being brought to justice is what you're seeing with Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, or perhaps with Mubarak. Given these three choices, what do you think will happen to Assad ultimately?
I actually think he'll be tried for crimes against humanity and then put to death.
So you're saying he will be tried?
Can you repeat what you said?
I'm sorry. I'm asking what do you think will be Assad's ultimate fate? Victory, death, or being brought to justice?
Yeah, well, if I may answer that, what matters to me is the fate of Syria, and I will give you three options. Would it be a foreign intervention that would destroy the country the same way that happened in Libya or Iraq? Would it be a civil war that would destroy the country the same way it happened in Lebanon? Or would it be surviving this crisis to what is best for the Syrian people? And I would vote for the third one. This is not wishful thinking. This is something I am working for with my colleagues, and I am hoping that my colleague would also concur. You cannot force me to answer this question. The question is not whether what Assad's fate will be. You will be doing Assad a big service if you link his fate to Syria's fate, because then me and millions of others would be defending his fate because we are defending our country's fate. What we care for is Syria surviving this crisis without foreign intervention, without civil war, with what is best for the Syrian people. And anything else is questionable. What will happen in the future is left for the Syrian people. Number one concern is let Syria pass this crisis.
If I could just very quickly, I know you're short on time, I would say that Assad has really already abdicated authority. The rest is just a process. By denying any responsibility for the killings under his watch, by saying that he's not in control of his own armed forces, by not ever answering the question of who these armed gangs are, by by refusing to comment on the current situation in Syria, he's abdicated leadership. The fate of Syria is not tied to the fate of Assad. Assad is a mere point in Syria's history, so Syria will survive this, will get past this once he's prosecuted and presumably put to death, and will move on in the process of rebuilding itself.
We have to leave it both there. Thank you very much for a very well-argued and spirited discussion with us. We hope we can do that again. We'll be posting this online shortly. That's Rafif Jouejati, the local coordination committees of Syria, and also Ali Mohammed, editor of Syrian Tribune.com. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.